Incentive. This is any punishment or reward designed to change behavior. They can be positive or negative. Maybe you get rewarded for doing your homework or punished for not cleaning your room, something like that. Substitution effect. This kind of explains why demand is downward sloping. Any change in quantity demanded for the good that is relatively cheaper. That means when the price goes down, you're going to increase not your demand for the product, but your quantity demanded of that product instead of the expensive product. Income effect. Again, demand is downward sloping. Change in quantity demanded caused by any change in the purchasing power of your money because a product now has a lower price. You can buy more of it. The difference between a change in supply and a change in quantity supplied, or quantity demanded versus demand. This is important. Here's how it works. A change in price always causes a change in quantity demanded or quantity supplied. Notice when P1 goes down to P2, we move along the demand curve until we go from Q1 to Q2. That's a movement along the line. There's not more demand when things get cheaper. There's more quantity demanded. Now, on the other hand, a full shift of demand could be caused by any change in the determinants of demand. For example, here you could see a movement from D1 to D2. That's an outward shift, maybe due to something like income or tastes and preferences. At P1, we see more quantity demanded at that price. Price elasticity of demand. The way we calculate this is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. That's a very important and powerful formula. You're going to see it a lot in micro. Basically, it measures the responsiveness of consumers to changes in price. Does price matter? If you can increase the price, and not see a reduction in total revenue, that's a good thing. We'll go over the total revenue test in just a moment. Price elasticity of supply. Similar formula. Percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. Obviously, now we're looking at producers. Again, this measures responsiveness of producers to changes in price. Total revenue test. This is a great way to look for elasticity. Here's how it works. If price increases and total revenue increases, then demand is inelastic. That's a good idea for a business. If price increases and total revenue decreases, then demand is elastic. That means consumers are responding in a big way to that change in price. For example, if the price of a good is $10 and the price is increased to $15, but the seller makes less money, that's not a good thing for the business because he's seen or she's seen elastic demand. Elastic versus inelastic versus unelastic numbers. This is what they look like. Always use absolute values, and an elastic demand or supply will have a coefficient greater than 1. Inelastic, less than 1, and unelastic is equal to 1. The easy way to remember this is look at the dominant shape here in the capital letter E. It's horizontal lines. Well, guess what the shape of an elastic curve is? It's a horizontal line. You'll see that in commodity markets, maybe like agricultural products. Here in Schrute farms, you might see something like that. Inelastic is easy to remember because, again, the dominant shape in the letter I is a vertical line. Notice inelastic curves are vertical. Insulin is a good example of that. You have to have it regardless of the price. Unit elasticity occurs when we see the same percentage in price, maybe minus 10%, resulting in an increase of 10% in quantity demanded. Income elasticity of demand. This is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in income. So you're making more money. How much more of this stuff are you going to be buying? If you find a negative number, that means you're making more money and you're buying less of that good. Hence, it's an inferior good. If it's a positive number, it's a normal good. Again, most things are normal goods. Cross-price elasticity of demand. We use this to figure out if goods are substitutes or complements. We calculate it by taking the percentage change in quantity demanded, it's always quantity as the numerator, divided by percentage change in the price of a different good. Notice this is good A and this is good B. We're comparing and looking at the relationship between these two things. If it's a positive number, they're substitutes. If it's a negative number, they're complements. 0 means there's no relationship between them. Equilibrium. Equilibrium occurs when no individual would be better off by changing their behavior, maybe adjusting price or consuming more or less, doing something different. Graphically, it occurs when QD equals QS, no shortage, no surplus. Market clearing price. This is the price at which there is no shortage or surplus. Again, QS and QD, but this term is really reflective of P sub E, or the market clearing price. Market is working well here. Supply equals demand, nothing going wrong. Consumer surplus. This is the net gain from purchasing a good or service. Basically, it's the price you were willing to pay minus the price you paid. I like to think about this like, how good of a deal do you feel you got? It's graphically reflected by finding PE and then shading in the triangle above that price until you hit the demand curve. That's consumer surplus. Producer surplus, kind of the opposite. This is the net gain from selling a good from a producer perspective. It's the price received by the seller minus the price the seller actually was willing to accept. So this is sort of, how good of a price did the seller get? Are they really happy with that? And graphically, we can find this by going from that price at equilibrium and this time just going down until we hit the supply curve. That's your producer surplus. Total surplus, pretty simple. Just add them both together. Graphically, it looks like that, the whole triangle. Government intervention. This takes place when the government gets involved in the private market. Any transaction they're involved with, maybe related to taxes or subsidies, quotas, tariffs, and price controls, is a form of government intervention. And all of these interventions can either incentivize, that means do more of it, or disincentivize, do less of it. A price ceiling. Price ceilings are government-mandated maximum prices that sellers can charge. They're a type of price control and government intervention. They create shortages. Notice PE and QE. But the market cannot function there because we have a price ceiling, PC. That's the highest price we can charge. We can't go above that PC. Therefore, by moving along that PC curve until we hit supply, we can find quantity supplied. That's not very much. And then keep going to find quantity demanded. This is a D here. And that's quite a bit more. The difference between QS and QD is what we call a shortage. Price floor, kind of the opposite thing. Whereas a price ceiling is intended to help consumers by keeping the price low, a price floor is trying to help producers. Let's look at it. We can see the price floor is above PE. Above PE. That's what the market wants to do, but it's not allowed to. It's only allowed to charge, the lowest they can charge is P sub F. Here we can see a surplus is created, and the distance is between QS, again, move along from that price until you hit supply, and then move along to hit demand for QD. That is a surplus. What these look like in a store is that a price floor, which creates a surplus, is a store with lots and lots of goods but not many customers. A price ceiling means we have a shortage. This is a store with lots and lots of people, but they're all sold out of everything. Deadweight loss. This is lost mutually beneficial transactions or exchanges. This is the enemy of economists. Here we can see that the market wants to function at PE and QE, but it can't. Why? Well, we have a price floor. The secret to graphing deadweight loss is that it's always a triangle pointed at the equilibrium intersection of supply and demand. You can see that red triangle there. It's always going to be a triangle. A tax. Well, this is a mandatory fee charged by government to businesses or individuals, and per unit taxes shift supply inwards. So it would look like this. Supply sub T. That's supply with the tax. And you can see the price goes up. Call that PE2. And the quantity goes down. A subsidy. This is basically the opposite of a tax. It's a government incentive or aid intended to promote an activity or action. It's kind of the opposite. So instead of shifting supply inwards, we will shift supply outwards. Maybe we call it S sub S for supply with the subsidy. Shift that outwards. Again, subsidies will reduce the price, PE2, and increase the quantity at equilibrium. Tax incidence. Tricky concept. Who pays the tax? This is what tax incidence is all about. It's the burden of tax shared between consumers and producers, and it depends on elasticity, which we'll define soon. So, if we put a tax in this market on the producers of it, who's going to pay more of the tax? We'll call this S sub T, for S with the tax. Well, in this case, because demand is very inelastic, again, it looks more like a capital I, that means consumers are going to pay more of the tax. And this here is the new price that consumers pay. Go down from here until we hit the old supply curve. This is what the producers get to keep. Notice, from PE, we had to go way up to hit PC, but we don't have to go down very far. Sorry, this should be P sub P for price of the producers. We don't go down very far. So therefore, this tax is being paid by consumers. Trade versus autarky. Autarky just means self-sufficiency and no trade. There's only domestic production happening and only domestic consumption happening. Think about Tom Hanks in Castaway. He was in autarky while he was on the island. Quotas and tariffs. These are government-mandated quantity controls. Quota. Maximum allowed to be imported, exported, or bought or sold. That's what a quota is. You can see it here, and rather than the y-axis, we're really now concerned with the x-axis, unlike the price controls. So Q sub Q, that's our quota, Q sub Q. It's a vertical line straight up, and I've got it labeled here quota, and it's creating deadweight loss because it's limiting quantity. We want to be at QE, but we can't because of this quota. A tariff, it's basically just a tax on imported goods. Remember the 5 shifters of demand and the 5 shifters of supply. These are really important. Starting with demand, price of related goods. This is complements and substitutes. Change in income, normal versus inferior goods rules apply there. Remember those. Change in tastes and preferences could be caused by advertising or preferences like maybe a health study comes out that shows that a good is really healthy to consume or something. Change in expectations, future price. This is a little tricky, guys. We always want to be thinking about current demand today, all right? Now, if you think in the future the price of this good is going to get cheaper, when would you rather consume it, today or in the future? Well, if you thought it was going to be cheaper in the future, you'll consume it in the future. That means less demand today. Works the opposite. If you think it'll be more expensive, you demand more today. We're always graphing today. Number of consumers, that's usually population. Shifters of supply, input prices, things like oil, electricity, wages, price of related goods, substitutes in production. This can be a little tricky. Think about it like this. You're a factory that produces soccer balls, but you just found out that basketballs are really, really valuable. What would you rather make? Well, it's easy for your factory to shift over towards that high valued good, so you're going to reduce your supply of soccer balls and increase your supply of basketballs. Technology means we can make more product or output at the same cost as before. So that's a good thing for supply. Change in expectations, similar to the demand shifter. If you're a factory and you think in the future you can sell it for a higher price, you're going to wait to supply things till the future. That means less supply today. If you think the price is going to go down, you'll supply more today. Number of producers, let's say new factories and firms open up, that's an increase in supply. That's it. Thanks for watching.